cultural reasons. As I would always say, these are not exhaustive. These are the three main reasons nations interact one among themselves. What are the merits of this interaction between nations? It leads to world peace. Yes, when all the nations interact and understand one another, they understand the reason each behave the way they do, there will not be need for war. They understand one another. War comes, like we said, when there is misunderstanding. Yes, but when nations come together to understand their purposes, then there won't be war. So one of the merits of interaction between nations is to reduce to the barest minimum war. The next is the spread of technical knowledge. Nations that are highly industrial, nations that parade very highly technological people would share this with other nations. Yes, and that is why Nigeria can send some of its citizens to the US, to Israel, to China to study some skills, come back here and implement them, and work in companies, develop our industries. So when nations interact among themselves, they share technical knowledge. And the last merit is abstraction of foreign aid. Nigeria has always depended on the US for foreign aid. If Nigeria has no smooth relationship with the US, for instance, it's not possible that the US will provide aid. For instance, the fund provided to help people suffering from malaria and people suffering from the dreaded HIV diseases. Some of these funds are provided by the US because of the mutual relationship Nigeria has with the country at the moment. So, when nations interact one with the other, it is easy to attract foreign aid, especially to countries where there is financial need. We are done with the issue of interdependence of nations, purpose of interaction, merits for interaction, or advantages for all of that. Now we shall now go over to the next, and that is foreign policy. What do we mean by foreign policy? If the policy is not a domestic or a national policy, then it is a foreign policy. Let us now define the foreign policy. It is a strategy or a planned course of action developed by the decision makers of a country aimed at manipulating the international environment in order to achieve a certain national objective. It is clear, whatever policy a nation has in diaspora must be a policy that will be for the interest of the nation. So when we talk about foreign policy, it stems from the national policy. That is why we say that it is meant to achieve certain national objectives. So whatever foreign policy Nigeria, for instance, makes would be a policy that will lead to the achievement of the already made national policy or for the interest of the nation. Now let us talk about the factors affecting Nigeria's foreign policy. What are these factors? There are three factors: geographical factors, economic factors, and government in power. Yes, because of the large area of proportion that Nigeria occupies, that of course the population of Nigeria, that of course puts it almost at the center, and that affects its foreign policy. Economic factors have to do with what the nation needs at a material time. What the nation is interested in economically at that material time will shape and define the position of its foreign policy. And of course the government in power, whether military or civilian. It has always been said that the military government are always interested in foreign policies, and of course have always been vibrant in maintaining foreign policies, while the civilian government more often than not are lackadaisical in their foreign policy. So the government in power, one way or the other, shapes the nature of foreign policy. Now, what are the aims and objectives of foreign policy? We can talk about three. First, the promotion of national interest, and that is very important. Whatever foreign policy a nation embarks upon, like I have said earlier, would be for the interest, for the national interest of the citizens of such country. And the next is the promotion of world peace. Yes, the foreign policies must actually capture the general idea of maintaining world peace. The third is friendship and cooperation with all nations. That's the essence of foreign policy. These are the aims and objectives of foreign policies. Now let us talk about Nigeria's foreign policy since independence. Foreign policy is like a chameleon, continues to change color to accommodate the present state of affairs in any country. But the substance of any foreign policy remains the same. No matter how it is adjusted, the substance is for national interest and of course to maintain healthy relationship with other nations. Shagari was said to be a disaster in the history of Nigerian's foreign policy. Mauritania's Obasanjo regime was said to be very dynamic and militant in their foreign policy. Of course, that was during the oil boom era when there was a whole lot of money. So the fact that Nigeria was economically vibrant actually impacted on the dynamism and militancy of their foreign policy. And that will be all for foreign policy. We shall now go over to the non-alignment. This is a familiar term, but as a movement, it is the united action and effort of a group of independent and sovereign nations in Asia, Africa, and etc. It is aimed at promoting dialogue and peace. Its origin was the summit that was organized among 25 states, convened by Marshal Tito at Belgrade in September 1961. It was this conference that led to the agreement of non-alignment to either take sides with the Eastern Bloc or take sides with the Western Bloc. So that whenever there is a conflict between these two blocks, the Eastern and Western Bloc, these continents, Asia and Africa, would be neutral. Of course, the non-alignment movement can be said to be a movement of neutrality and of course dialogue when there is a conflicting issue, instead of taking sides with the two blocks, bringing about confrontation. So these continents met together and agreed to always be neutral, to sit on the fence whenever these two main blocks are having conflicting issues, so as to attack them and bring about dialogue to solve problems instead of fighting over them. Let us look at Nigeria and the issue of non-alignment. Nigeria actually joined the non-alignment movement in Cairo, Egypt in the year 1964, and that was in July. So Nigeria has been a member of the non-alignment movement, and of course till today such has been the case. We are done with the non-alignment and Nigeria's contribution and when they join. Now we want to focus on another topic, and that is international organizations. The first is the United Nations. The United Nations is almost the largest international organization that came into power in the year 1945. No, but before the UN, we had the League of Nations. After the First World War that lasted from 1914 to about 1918, all the nations who witnessed the atrocity of that war, who witnessed the disaster, the pain and the penury, the deaths, the massive deaths brought about that war, decided to come together and say, what do we do to forestall another war? And that was what led to the formulation of League of Nations in about 1939. So in about 1919 rather, that's when the League of Nations came into power. The essence of the League of Nations was to forestall a similar occurrence. I mean, what happened in the year 1914, that's the First World War. So member nations came together and said, no, we do not want wars again. We do not want to witness what we witnessed some years back. And that was how the League of Nations came into power. But then in about 1939 or thereabout, the Second World War broke out, which means the League of Nations was not even capable enough to forestall a Second World War. So at the end of the Second World War, it was presumed that the League of Nations was not capable enough. Hence, it was scrapped, and the United Nations Organization was formulated in the year 1945. And glory be to God, since then we've not witnessed any world war. But of course, we've been witnessing national wars, ethnic wars, cold wars here and there, conflict and skirmishes here and there. But of course, the UN has done a very good job. One of the primary aim and objective of the United Nations is to settle disputes and maintain, especially maintain world peace. And that of course has been true. The United Nations Organization has the General Assembly, they have the Secretariat, they have the Trusteeship Council, and of course the International Court of Justice, ICJ. These are some of the main organs of the United Nations organization. The next international organization is the OAU,